The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Minji stepped onto the docking platform of Kepler Station. The artificial gravity felt heavier than Earth standard, pressing down on her shoulders like an invisible weight. Around her, the massive space station hummed with activity. Alien voices echoed through the corridors in languages she couldn't understand. But the tone was universal, the sound of people working. Commander Jiho waited for her at the security checkpoint. He was tall for a Vorthan, nearly 7 feet, with deep blue skin that shimmered under the station's bright lights. His uniform was perfect, every metal polished, every crease sharp. When he spoke, his voice carried the confidence of someone who had never failed at anything important. "Consultant Minji," he said, extending a 3-fingered hand. "Welcome to the most secure prison facility in known space." Minji shook his hand. His grip was firm but careful, like he was holding something fragile. She noticed how his eyes studied her face, looking for something. Fear, maybe, or respect. She gave him neither. "Thank you for having me, Commander," she said. Her voice was calm, professional. "I'm looking forward to seeing your facility." Jiho led her through a series of security doors. Each one required different scans, retinal, genetic, neural patterns. The technology was impressive, far beyond anything humans had developed. But Minji noticed other things too. She saw how long each scan took. She counted the seconds between the door closing behind them and the next one opening ahead. She watched the guards' faces, noting when they looked bored and when they paid attention. The Galactic Prison Authority chose this location carefully, Jiho explained as they walked. Kepler Station sits at the edge of explored space. The nearest inhabited system is 3 months away by the fastest ships. Even if someone escaped from the prison, they would die in space long before reaching safety. "Smart," Minji said. But she was thinking about something else. 3 months was a long time. Long enough for someone clever to find another solution. They entered a lift that moved sideways as much as up and down, following the station's rotating sections. Through the transparent walls, Minji could see the prison complex. It was huge, a metal city floating in space. Thousands of cells arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Guard towers at every junction. Patrol ships moving in careful circles around the outside. "We hold over 50,000 inmates," Jiho continued. "Representatives of 47 different species. Each one was sent here because they could not be contained anywhere else. What's your escape rate?" Minji asked. Jiho's chest swelled with pride. "0. In 12 years of operation, not a single prisoner has escaped from this facility." They reached the administrative level, and Jiho led her to an observation deck. Below them, the main prison complex stretched out like a mechanical ocean. Minji could see tiny figures moving through the corridors, prisoners and guards going about their daily routines. "The design is based on mathematical principles," Jiho explained. "Every angle calculated for maximum observation. Every distance measured for optimal response time. The artificial intelligence monitors every square meter, every heartbeat, every word spoken." Minji nodded, but she was looking at something else. In the far corner of the complex, she could see a section that looked different. The walls were thicker there, the security checkpoints more frequent. "What's in that area?" "Maximum security," Jiho said. "Our most dangerous prisoners. Political terrorists, war criminals, mass murderers. They are kept in complete isolation, under constant surveillance." "Can I see it?" Jiho hesitated. "The tour was designed to show you our general population areas first. The maximum security wing requires special authorization." "I specialize in maximum security," Minji said. "That's why you brought me here, isn't it?" Another alien joined them on the observation deck. He was shorter than Jiho, with darker blue skin and scars across his neck. His uniform had fewer medals but more practical equipment: a stun weapon, restraint devices, communication gear. "This is Dong-Yoon, our chief of security," Jiho said. "He has some concerns about your visit." Dong-Yoon looked at Minji with obvious suspicion. "Humans have a reputation," he said. "Stories spread through the galaxy about your creativity. Some people Think humans are dangerous because you don't follow normal patterns. Is that what you think? Minji asked. I think you're here to find weaknesses in our system, Dongyun said, and I think you'll find them whether they exist or not. Minji smiled for the first time since arriving. You're probably right about both things. Jiho stepped between them. Consultant Minji comes highly recommended by the Terran Defense Council. Her expertise has helped design security systems for military installations throughout human space. Military installations are different from prisons, Dongyun said. Soldiers fight to win battles. Prisoners fight to survive. They think differently. How differently? Minji asked. Dongyun considered the question. A soldier attacks weakness. A prisoner waits for opportunity. Interesting distinction, Minji said. What about prisoners who used to be soldiers? The question hung in the air like smoke. Jiho and Dongyun exchanged glances. They both knew that many of their maximum security inmates had military backgrounds. Perhaps we should begin the detailed tour, Jiho said, starting with our general population areas. They spent the next 2 hours walking through different sections of the prison. Minji saw the dining halls where thousands of inmates ate at the same time, supervised by automated systems that could detect weapons or contraband instantly. She visited the work areas where prisoners manufactured goods for the galactic economy, their movements tracked by sensors that could measure stress levels and predict violent behavior. Everything was clean, efficient, and completely controlled. The technology was incredible. The planning was perfect. The execution was flawless, but Minji noticed other things too. She saw how the guards walked the same routes at the same times every day. She noticed which cameras moved and which ones were fixed. She counted the seconds between automated announcements and observed which prisoners paid attention to them and which ones ignored them completely. Most importantly, she watched the inmates themselves. They moved through their routines like actors in a play, doing exactly what was expected of them. But their eyes told a different story. They were watching too, learning, waiting. Your security is impressive, she told Jiho as they finished the tour. The technology is far beyond anything I've seen. Thank you, Jiho said. We pride ourselves on staying ahead of any possible threat. But you're thinking like wardens, Minji continued, not like prisoners. Dongyun frowned. What do? You mean, you've built a perfect system for keeping people in, Minji said. But you haven't considered what those people might do while they're waiting to get out. Our surveillance prevents any planning or coordination, Jiho said. The artificial intelligence analyzes every conversation, every gesture, every interaction. What does it do with that information? It identifies threats and alerts security personnel. So it's reactive, Minji said. It waits for prisoners to do something wrong, then responds. Correct. Minji looked back at the observation window, watching the tiny figures moving through the corridors below. That's your first problem, she said quietly. Jiho and Dongyun waited for her to explain, but she didn't say anything else. Instead, she asked a simple question that would change everything. When can I see the maximum security wing? The next morning, Jiho received a message that changed everything. The call came directly from the Galactic Prison Authority headquarters, transmitted through encrypted channels that only carried the most important communications. Commander Jiho. The voice belonged to Director Sovin, the highest authority in the prison system. We need immediate verification of your facility's security status. Jiho straightened in his chair. Sir, our security remains at maximum efficiency. 0 escape attempts in the past quarter. That's not what we're hearing, Director Sovin said. Reports suggest that human military installations have been compromised using techniques we don't understand. If humans can break through our allies' defenses, what makes you certain they can't break through ours? The question hit Jiho like a physical blow. He had never considered that possibility. Sir, our systems are mathematically perfect. The human consultant confirmed our technology is beyond anything in human space. The human consultant is there to find weaknesses, Commander. Not to praise your achievements? Director Sovin's next words made Jiho's blood run cold. You have 72 hours to prove that your facility can contain human-level threats. If you cannot provide that proof, we will be forced to relocate our most dangerous prisoners to more secure facilities. The transmission ended, leaving Jiho staring at a blank screen. Relocating prisoners meant admitting failure. It meant the end of his career, possibly the end of his life. In Vorthan culture, failure in duty was worse than death. He called Dong-Yun. Immediately. We need the human consultant in maximum security today. Sir, I don't think that's wise. She's already identified problems with our general population areas. What problems? Dong-Yun pulled up his report on a portable screen. She pointed out 17 separate security vulnerabilities yesterday. None of them were in our threat assessment. Databases. 17? Jiho felt his hearts beginning to race. Vorthans had 2 hearts, and right now both of them were working overtime. Minor issues, Dong-Yun said quickly. Camera blind spots that last for seconds. Sensor delays during shift changes. Timing patterns in the automated systems. Nothing that would allow an actual escape. But enough to allow planning, Dong-Yun nodded reluctantly. She said our surveillance was reactive instead of predictive. I didn't understand what she meant until I reviewed the recordings. Show me. Dong-Yun activated a holographic display that showed the prison corridors from the previous day. Here, he said, pointing to a section where inmates were moving to their work assignments. Normal movement pattern, nothing unusual. I don't see anything wrong. Watch prisoner TK-7749, Dong-Yun said. The Krillian in the blue work uniform. Jiho watched the figure move through the corridor. The prisoner walked at normal speed, followed the designated route, and showed no signs of suspicious behavior. Now watch again, Dong-Yun said. But this time, notice what he's looking at. The second viewing revealed something different. The prisoner's eyes weren't focused on where he was going. Instead, he was studying the walls, the ceiling, the placement of sensors and cameras. His head moved in tiny increments, cataloging details that the security system had classified as normal behavior. He's mapping the surveillance network, Jiho said, and he's not the only one. Dong-Yun switched to different camera feeds. After the human consultant's visit, prisoner behavior changed across all sections. They're still following rules, still maintaining proper conduct, but they're watching everything. Jiho felt a chill run down his spine. How many prisoners are exhibiting this behavior? Approximately 30% of the general population. The increase started exactly 4 hours after Consultant Minji finished her tour. The realization hit Jiho like a meteor impact. The human consultant hadn't just identified security weaknesses. She had taught the prisoners to see them too. He found Minji in the station's guest quarters, reviewing technical specifications on a portable computer. When he entered, she looked up with the same calm expression she had worn since arriving. "Commander," she said, "I was just studying your maximum security protocols." "Impressive documentation." "We need to talk," Jiho said. Privately. Minji closed her computer and followed him to a secure conference room. The walls were lined with signal dampeners that prevented any form of electronic surveillance. It was the most private place on the station. "What did you do yesterday?" Jiho asked. "I observed your security systems and identified areas for improvement." "You?" "Did more than that. Our prisoners are acting differently." Minji tilted her head slightly. "How differently?" "They're studying our surveillance network, mapping our procedures, analyzing our patterns. And this surprises you?" The question caught Jiho off guard. "Of course it surprises me." "Our security was perfect before you arrived." "No," Minji said quietly. "Your security was invisible before I arrived." "There's a difference." She stood and walked to the conference room's single window. Outside, the prison complex continued its routine operations. Thousands of inmates moving through their daily schedules, followed every step by cameras and sensors. "Your prisoners were always intelligent," she continued. "Many of them are brilliant. Military strategists, criminal masterminds, political revolutionaries. You didn't make them stupid by putting them in cages. Our surveillance prevents them from planning anything." Your surveillance prevents them from communicating plans, Minji corrected. It doesn't prevent them from thinking. Jiho joined her. At the window, what's the difference? A plan requires coordination between multiple people. Thinking only requires one mind. And until yesterday, your prisoners didn't know what to think about. The implication hit him like a physical force. You showed them what to look for. I showed you what to look for, Minji said. They just happened to be listening. Before Jiho could respond, his communication device buzzed with an emergency signal. Dongyun's voice came through the speaker, tight with tension. Commander, we have a situation in maximum security. Prisoner designation K001 has requested to speak with the human consultant. Jiho and Minji exchanged glances. K001 was Kyungmin, the most dangerous prisoner in the facility, a former military commander who had led a rebellion that lasted 3 years and cost millions of lives. He had been in solitary confinement for 36 months without speaking a single word to guards or staff. Did he say why? Jiho asked. No, sir. He just said it was about security protocols. Minji was already moving toward the door. We should go. Absolutely not, Jiho said. K001 is classified as maximum threat level. No unauthorized personnel are allowed within 50 meters of his cell. Commander, Minji said, turning to face him, you brought me here to evaluate your security. K001 just became part of that evaluation. Jiho knew she was right, but every instinct told him this was a mistake. K001 had been silent for 3 years. Why was he speaking now? And why did he want to talk to the human? Sir? Dongyun's voice came through the communicator again. There's something else. K001 said to tell the human consultant that he's been waiting for her. The conference room fell silent. Minji's expression didn't change, but something shifted. In her eyes, a recognition maybe, or a memory. You know him, Jiho said. It wasn't a question. No, Minji replied, but he knows me. She headed for the door again, and this time Jiho didn't try to stop her. Whatever was happening, he needed to understand it. And the only way to understand it was to let it happen. Set up the meeting. He told Dongyun through the communicator. Maximum security protocols, full monitoring, yes sir. As they left the conference room, Jiho realized that everything had changed. His perfect prison was no longer perfect. His silent prisoner was no longer silent. And the human consultant who was supposed to help him had somehow made everything more dangerous. But he also realized something else. For the first time in 12 years, something interesting was about to happen in his prison. And despite his fear, despite his training, despite everything that told him this was wrong, Jiho found himself curious to see what would happen next. The maximum security wing felt different from the rest of the prison. The corridors were narrower, the lights dimmer, the air itself seemed heavier. Every surface was designed to prevent hiding places or handholds. The walls curved and impossible. Angles that confused the eye and made distance hard to judge. Minji walked between Jiho and Dongyun, her footsteps echoing in the silence. They passed through 7 separate security checkpoints, each one more sophisticated than the last. Energy barriers that could stop projectiles moving at light speed. Neural scanners that could detect hostile thoughts. Gravity manipulators that could pin someone to the floor with the force of a planet. This level houses 43 prisoners, Jiho explained as they walked. Each one isolated in individual cells with no possibility of communication. How do they eat? Minji asked. Automated feeding systems. Food is materialized directly inside their cells using molecular assembly technology. Exercise? Virtual reality systems provide mental stimulation. Physical exercise is monitored and controlled through medical nanobots that maintain muscle tone. Minji nodded, but she was thinking about something else. Complete isolation was supposed to break prisoners. Spirits make them give up hope, but it could also do the opposite. Some minds grew stronger in solitude, more focused, more dangerous. They reached the central monitoring station, a circular room surrounded by screens showing every maximum security cell. Soman, the head warden for this section, was waiting for them She was a Calarian, small and thin with silver skin that reflected the light from the monitors. Her species was known for attention to detail and perfect memory. "Consultant Minji," Soman said. "I've reviewed your preliminary report on genital population security. Your observations are ... concerning. What concerns you most?" Minji asked. "You identified 17 separate vulnerabilities in systems that passed every security audit for 12 years. Either our auditing process is completely inadequate, or you see patterns that our analysis missed." "Both," Minji said simply. "Summons." Expression showed she didn't appreciate the blunt answer. "Our analysis is based on mathematical models that account for every possible variable." "Every variable you can think of," Minji corrected. "What about the variables you can't think of, such as?" Minji looked at the monitors showing the maximum security cells. Most of the prisoners were sitting quietly, reading books or watching entertainment programs. They looked peaceful, almost content. "Hope," she said. Jiho frowned. "Hope is not a security variable." "It's the most important security variable," Minji replied. "A prisoner without hope just waits to die. A prisoner with hope starts planning." She pointed to one of the monitors. "Show me KO01. Soman activated a screen that displayed Kingmin's cell. He sat cross-legged on his bed, eyes closed, hands resting on his knees. He looked like he was meditating. "He's been in that position for 3 hours, Soman said. "Same routine every day. 6 hours of meditation, 2 hours of reading, 4 hours of sleep. The remaining 12 hours he spends staring at the wall. What's he thinking about during those 12 hours? Unknown. Neural scanners can detect hostile intent but not specific thoughts." Minji studied the screen. Kyungmin appeared. Completely calm, almost serene. But she knew looks could be deceiving. Some of the most dangerous people she had ever met looked perfectly peaceful on the outside. "I want to speak with him face to face," she said. "Impossible," Dongyun said immediately. "Maximum security protocols prohibit direct contact with Category 5 prisoners. Then how do you interrogate them?" "We don't," Soman said. "Category 5 prisoners are beyond rehabilitation. They're contained, not questioned." "So you've been holding the galaxy's most dangerous military strategist for 3 years, and you've never asked him anything?" The silence that followed answered. Her question set up the meeting, Jiho said quietly. "Sir, regulations clearly state..." "I'm aware of the regulations, Dongyun. I'm also aware that our regulations may not be adequate for this situation." Soman activated her console. "I can arrange a remote communication link. Audio and visual contact through armored barriers." "No," Minji said. "Face to face." "That's suicide," Dongyun protested. KO01 killed 14 people with his bare hands during his capture. "And I'm betting he could have killed a lot more if he wanted to," Minji replied. "The question is why he stopped." 20 minutes later, they stood outside Kyungmin's cell. The energy barrier that served as his door shimmered like heat waves, distorting the view inside. Minji could see him sitting on his bed, still in the same meditative position. "Recording devices activated," Soman announced. "Emergency protocols armed. Any sign of hostility and the cell will be flooded with neural dampening gas." "He knows you're here," Jiho observed. "But he hasn't moved. He's waiting," Minji said. "For what?" "To see if I'm worth talking to." The energy barrier dissolved, and Minji stepped into the cell. Behind her, she heard Dongyun curse in his native language and Summon's fingers flying over emergency controls. The cell was larger than she had expected, about 4 meters square. The walls were bare metal, polished to a mirror finish. There was a bed, a small table, and a waste disposal unit. Nothing else. No windows, no decorations, no personal items of any kind. Kyungmin opened his eyes and looked at her. He was older than she had expected, maybe 50 years old, with the kind of scars that came from real combat. His hair was gray at the temples, and his hands showed calluses that would never fully heal. "You're not what I expected," he said. His voice was rough from disuse but clear. "What did you expect? Someone older?" More obviously dangerous. He studied her face. But I suppose the most dangerous humans rarely look the part. You wanted to see me. I wanted to see what kind of human they would send to evaluate this place. He gestured around the cell, and now I know. What do you know? Kyungmin smiled for the first time in 3 years. They sent someone who understands prisons from both sides. Outside the cell, Minji could hear urgent whispers between Jiho and his staff. They were trying to figure out what Kyungmin meant. But she knew exactly what he meant. How long have you been planning your escape? She asked. Who says I'm planning to escape? 3 years of perfect behavior. Complete cooperation with all protocols. No attempts at communication or resistance. Either you've given up completely, or you're waiting for the right moment. And which do you think it is? Minji looked around the cell again. The mirror-polished walls weren't just for preventing hiding places. They also served as observation surfaces, allowing someone to see around corners and monitor activity outside. The cell, the meditation position, wasn't just for mental discipline. It was also the optimal position for explosive movement in any direction. I think you've been studying this prison for 3 years, she said, learning every detail, every routine, every weakness, and I think you could have escaped any time you wanted to. But then why haven't I? Because you're not just planning to escape, you're planning something bigger. The cell fell silent. Outside, the monitoring equipment was recording every word, every gesture, every micro-expression. But Minji knew that the real conversation was happening in the spaces between words. The human consultant is very perceptive, Kyungmin said finally. The human consultant also knows that the most dangerous prisoners aren't the ones trying to get out, they're the ones who choose to stay in. Kyungmin stood up slowly, keeping his hands visible and his movements non-threatening. Even so, Minji heard the sound of weapons charging outside the cell. Would you like to know what I've learned in 3 years? He asked. I'd like to know why you wanted to meet me. Because, Kyungmin said, you're the first person who's come to this prison looking for the same things I've been looking for, which are weaknesses, patterns, opportunities. His smile grew wider. And now that you're here, I finally have someone worth talking to. The conversation with Kyungmin lasted only 15 minutes, but its effects spread through the prison like ripples in still water. Within hours, something had changed in the behavior of inmates across all security levels. Minji noticed it first. During her morning review of surveillance recordings, she sat in the security office with So-min, watching feeds from the previous night shift. The prisoners appeared to be following their normal routines, but their movements had gained a new quality. They walked with more purpose. Their eyes focused on different things. They paid attention to details they had ignored for years. Look at this, So-min said, highlighting a section of video from Cell Block C, prisoner TK-9847, the Andromedan engineer. Watch his behavior during evening meal distribution. The recording showed Taeyun, a tall alien with 4 arms and skin, like polished as stone. He had been imprisoned for sabotaging orbital manufacturing stations. For 2 years, he had taken his meals without incident, eating quietly and returning to his cell. Last night was different. Taeyun still followed proper procedures, but his upper 2 eyes tracked the movement of the food delivery drones, while his lower 2 eyes studied the ventilation grates above the dining area. His movements appeared casual, but every gesture served a purpose. He's mapping the automated systems, Minji observed. But why now? What changed? Minji knew the answer, but she didn't say it out loud. Word had spread through the prison's hidden communication networks that the human consultant had identified weaknesses in the security systems. The prisoners didn't know what those weaknesses were, but they knew they existed. And that knowledge had awakened something that had been sleeping for years. Show me more, she said. So-min switched to different camera feeds. In Cell Block F, Yoonji, a cybercriminal from the Rigel system, was using her daily computer access. Timed differently. Instead of reading news or watching entertainment, she was studying system diagnostic reports that most people would find boring. But Minji recognized what she was really doing. She was learning the prison's digital infrastructure from the inside. In the maximum security wing, Other changes were happening. Wanbin, a former military commander who had been captured during the border wars, was using his exercise time to test the response patterns of automated security drones. He would move in certain ways, creating deliberate motion signatures, then observe how quickly the monitoring systems reacted. "They're conducting research," Minji said. "Research into what?" "How this prison really works." Summon's silver skin darkened, a sign of stress in her species. "Our systems monitor all prisoner activity. If they were planning something, we would detect it." "Your systems monitor what prisoners do," Minji corrected. "They don't monitor what prisoners think. And these prisoners are thinking very carefully about everything they've seen and heard over the years." The truth was more complex than Soman understood. The prison's surveillance was incredibly sophisticated, but it was designed around the assumption that prisoners would try to break rules or communicate secretly. It wasn't designed to detect intelligence gathering disguised as normal behavior. New alert appeared on Summon's console. "Motion anomaly in cell block D," she announced. "Multiple prisoners exhibiting unusual behavior patterns." They switched to the live feeds from cell block D. What they saw made both of them lean forward in their chairs. The prisoners were conducting what appeared to be a normal social interaction period. They sat in groups, playing games, having conversations, reading books. Everything looked perfectly normal. But their body language told a different story. Small gestures were being passed between groups. A hand position here, a specific way of holding a book there. An eye blink pattern that lasted just a moment too long. The surveillance algorithms classified all of it as normal behavior, but Minji could see the hidden communication system operating. "Beneath the surface, they're sharing information," she said. "Telling each other what they've discovered? That's impossible. Our communication monitors would detect any attempt at coordination. Your monitors detect obvious communication attempts. This is something else." Minji pointed to a group of prisoners playing a simple board game. "Watch the game pieces. Every move carries information about guard rotations, camera angles, system maintenance schedules. They're building a complete picture of your operations." "How do you know this?" "Because it's exactly what I would do in their situation." The realization hit Soman like a physical blow. The human consultant wasn't just observing prisoner behavior. She was recognizing it, understanding it, maybe even predicting it. "We need to stop this immediately," Soman said, reaching for the alarm controls. "Stop what?" Minji asked. "They're not breaking any rules. They're not threatening anyone. They're not even communicating in any way your systems can prove." "But you just said they're sharing information?" "I said they're sharing information? I didn't say they were doing anything illegal." Soman stared at her. "What's the difference?" "Intelligence gathering isn't a crime," Minji explained. "Every prisoner has the right to observe their environment. Every prisoner has the right to think about what they observe. And every prisoner has the right to remember what they think about. But if they're coordinating, they're not coordinating anything yet. They're just making sure everyone has the same information. What they do with that information is what matters." Another alert appeared on the console, then another. Then 6 more in rapid succession. Prisoner behavior anomalies were being detected throughout the prison complex. "This is spreading too fast," Soman said. "How are they communicating across different security levels?" Minji studied the pattern of alerts on the screen. They weren't random. They were following specific pathways through the prison complex, moving along routes that connected different sections and security levels. "They're using the staff," she said. "What? Look at the timing." "Information is spreading faster than prisoner movement would allow, but it matches perfectly with staff rotation schedules." Soman pulled up the staff duty rosters and overlaid them with the behavior anomaly reports. The correlation was undeniable. Information was moving through the prison along the same routes taken by guards, maintenance workers, and administrative personnel. "The staff doesn't know they're carrying messages," Minji continued. "But the prisoners are using them as unwitting communication relays, a gesture here, a specific behavior there. The staff sees it, moves to the next section, and their body language or stress levels carry the information forward. That's, brilliant, Minji finished. And completely undetectable by your monitoring systems. Summon's console lit up with urgent messages from security teams throughout the prison. Everyone had noticed the changes in prisoner behavior, but no one could identify specific violations or threats. What do we do? Soman asked. Nothing, Minji said. Nothing? Right now, they're just gathering information and sharing knowledge. They haven't actually done anything wrong. If you crack down on them now, you'll push them from passive intelligence gathering to active resistance. But if we wait, we learn what they're really planning. And more importantly, we learn who the real leaders are. Minji stood up and walked to the main surveillance screen. Hundreds of camera feeds showed thousands of prisoners going about their daily routines, but now she could see the hidden activity underneath the surface. The careful observations, the subtle communications, the gradual construction of a complete intelligence picture. You wanted to know if your prison could contain human-level threats, she said to Salman. Well, now you're going to find out. Because, as of this morning, every prisoner in this facility is thinking like a human. Is that good or bad? Minji smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That depends entirely on what they decide to do with all the information they're gathering. Outside the security office, the prison continued its normal operations. But beneath the surface, 47 different species were learning to think like the galaxy's most dangerous problem solvers, and somewhere in maximum security. Kyungmin sat in meditation, smiling at knowledge only he possessed. The crisis began at 0347 hours with a single malfunctioning sensor in cell block B. The malfunction lasted exactly 12 seconds before backup systems engaged and normal operations resumed. The automated maintenance report classified it as a minor technical issue requiring routine repair. But Minji was awake, studying surveillance patterns in her guest quarters. When the alarm chimed softly on her portable monitor, 12 seconds was too precise to be accidental. Someone had timed that malfunction perfectly. She was reaching for her communication device when the second incident occurred. A power fluctuation in the dining hall affected the food delivery drones for 15 seconds. Then a third incident, a temporary glitch in the atmospheric recycling system that caused a brief change in air pressure on level 7. Each incident was minor, easily explained and quickly resolved. But together they formed a pattern that made Minji's blood run cold. Someone was testing the prison's response systems. And they were doing it with surgical precision. Her communication device buzzed with an incoming call from Jiho. His voice carried the strain of someone who hadn't slept in 36 hours. Consultant Minji, we need you in the command center immediately. I'll be right there. The command center was in chaos when she arrived. Technicians worked frantically at their stations while supervisors shouted orders across the room. Status. Screens showed red warning indicators throughout the prison complex. 17 separate system anomalies in the past 4 hours, Donyun reported as she entered. All minor, all easily resolved, but the pattern is unprecedented. What's your assessment? Jiho asked. Minji studied the incident reports displayed on the main screen. The timing was too perfect, the distribution too even, the resolution too quick. They're not system failures, she said. They're tests. Tests of what? Response times? Backup procedures? Emergency protocols. Someone is mapping your entire crisis management system? Soman joined them at the central console. Impossible. Our analysis shows no coordination between incidents. They're occurring in different sections with different technical causes. Show me the maintenance logs, Minji said. Soman activated a holographic display that showed every maintenance request and system repair for the past week. The data looked normal, routine repairs, scheduled maintenance, predictable wear patterns on equipment, but Minji saw something else. Here, she said, pointing to a specific entry. Ventilation system maintenance in cell block F, performed by maintenance worker designation MW7743. Standard procedure, Soman said. Atmospheric recycling requires weekly inspection. Who is MW7743? Soman pulled up the personnel file. Teeman, Calarium maintenance specialist, employed here for 18 months. Perfect service record, no disciplinary issues. Where is he now? Off duty. Scheduled to return tomorrow for... Soman stopped mid-sentence as she read the schedule. For emergency repair work in cell block B? The same cell block B where the first sensor malfunction had occurred? Pull his work history for the past month, Minji ordered. The holographic display updated to show Timon's maintenance assignments. At first glance, everything appeared normal. But when Minji overlaid the data with the timing of recent incidents, a disturbing pattern emerged. Timon had performed routine maintenance in every section where anomalies had occurred, always within 72 hours before the problems developed. He's sabotaging his own repairs, Dongyin said. Creating delayed failures that can be remotely triggered. No, Minji said. He's much smarter than that. He's not sabotaging anything. He's installing features. What kind of features? Remote access points? Hidden communication relays. Bypass circuits that allow temporary system control. She turned to face Jiho. Your prisoners aren't just gathering information anymore. They're actively modifying the prison's infrastructure. The implications hit everyone in the room simultaneously. If the prisoners could control basic systems, they could create distractions, disable security measures, or manipulate life support systems. Arrest MW7743 immediately, Jiho ordered. Wait, Minji said. If you arrest him now, you'll only catch one person. But if you're right about his activities, he's not working alone. What do you suggest? Let him continue his normal routine, but monitor everything he does. Find out who's giving him instructions and how those instructions are being communicated. Jiho looked uncertain. That's extremely risky. More risky than not knowing how extensive this network has become? Before Jiho could answer, new alarms began sounding throughout the command center. This time, the incidents weren't minor technical problems. Emergency lights flashed red as multiple systems reported critical failures. Hull breach in Section 7, one technician reported. Atmospheric containment compromised. Power failure in maximum security, another voice called out. Backup generators not responding. Communication systems down in cell block C through F. Minji watched the chaos unfold with growing admiration for whoever was orchestrating it. The sequence of failures was carefully designed to overwhelm the crisis response team and force them to split their attention across multiple emergencies. It's starting, she said quietly. What's starting? Jiho demanded. The real test. Everything up to now was preparation. This is the actual operation. What operation? Before Minji could answer, the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in after. 3 seconds, bathing the command center in red light. But 3 seconds was enough time for someone to move through the prison undetected or to access systems that were temporarily unmonitored. Status report, Jiho shouted over the emergency alarms. Hull breach was false alarm, one technician reported. Sensors malfunctioned. Power restored to maximum security. No apparent damage. Communications coming back online. All systems returning to normal operations. The entire crisis had lasted less than 5 minutes. But Minji knew that 5 minutes could be an eternity for someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Run a full prisoner count, she ordered. Every section, every cell, that will take 2 hours, Soman protested. Then start now. While the count proceeded, Minji requested access to the Central Surveillance Archive. She wanted to review every camera feed from the past 5 minutes, looking for anything that might have been missed during the chaos. What she found made her stomach clench with anticipation and fear during the power failure. One camera in the maximum security wing had remained operational on auxiliary power. It showed Kyungmin's cell during the 3 seconds of darkness. In those 3 seconds, someone had entered his cell and left again, but according to the security logs, Kyungmin was still alone in his cell. The door seals showed no sign of being opened. The energy barriers had never been deactivated, yet the camera clearly showed a second figure in the cell during the blackout. Impossible, Soman said when Minji showed her the footage. No one can enter maximum security cells without triggering every alarm in the system. Someone just did. Then who was it? Minji studied the frozen image on the screen. The second figure was blurred by motion and poor lighting, but she could make out enough details to draw some conclusions. "Someone who knows this prison better than you do," she said. "Someone who's had 3 years to study every system, every procedure, every weakness. You think another prisoner escaped their cell? I think another prisoner was never in a cell to begin with." The prisoner count results came back 2 hours later. Every inmate was accounted for. Every cell was properly secured. Every identification scan confirmed that the right prisoner was in the right place, but Minji knew the count was wrong. Somewhere in the prison, someone was moving freely through systems designed to contain them. Someone who understood both the technology and the psychology of their captors. Someone who had just demonstrated that the galaxy's most secure prison was not secure at all. "Commander," she said to Jiho, "we have a bigger problem than you realize." "What do you mean?" "I mean that everything you think you know about this prison is wrong, and whoever just visited Kyungmin is about to prove it." The revelation came in pieces, like a puzzle being assembled by invisible hands. Minji spent the next 18 hours reviewing 3 years of surveillance data, looking for patterns that everyone else had missed. What she found changed everything. Show May prisoner intake records for the past 36 months. She told Soman in the security office. The holographic display materialized thousands of records. Each prisoner transfer, each new arrival, each administrative detail of their processing into the facility. "What are you looking for?" Soman asked. "Someone who doesn't belong here." Minji began filtering the data, searching for anomalies in arrival. Dates, transfer authorizations, and biological scans. Most prisoners had complete documentation chains stretching back to their arrests. But 3 files showed irregularities that made her pulse quicken. "Here," she said, highlighting one record. "Prisoner designation K847, arrived 14 months ago from a military transport vessel. No prior custody records." "Military prisoners often have classified backgrounds," Soman explained. "But they still have transfer authorizations from the arresting authority." This file shows direct assignment from the Galactic Prison Authority headquarters with no intermediate custody. Minji pulled up the prisoner's current status. K847 was listed as deceased, having died in a transport accident during a routine medical transfer 8 months earlier. But the death certificate was filed by someone whose authorization code didn't exist in the system database. "He's not dead," she said. "The medical records clearly show. The medical records show what someone wanted you to see." Minji highlighted another file. "Look at this. Prisoner designation K1105, arrived 22 months ago. Also listed as deceased, also with invalid authorization codes." A pattern was emerging. 7 prisoners over 3 years had arrived with questionable documentation and later died in carefully documented but untraceable incidents. 7 people who had effectively vanished from official records while remaining physically present in the prison. "They're ghosts," Minji said. "People who officially don't exist but are still here. That's impossible." "Our biological scanners track every life form in the facility. Your biological scanners track registered inmates. But if someone's official status is deceased, the scanners ignore their biological signature as irrelevant data." Soman stared at the records. "You're saying we have 7 unregistered prisoners moving freely through the facility?" "I'm saying you have 7 people who've spent months or years studying this prison from the inside, with no supervision and no restrictions because your system thinks they're dead." The implications were staggering. These ghost prisoners could move through sections where they weren't supposed to be, access systems they shouldn't know about, and communicate with inmates who were under strict isolation protocols. "We need to find them immediately," Soman said, reaching for the emergency alert controls. "No," Minji said. "If you trigger a facility-wide search, you'll force them to act. And I don't think we're ready for what that might involve." "What do you mean?" Before Minji could answer, Jiho's voice came through the communication system. "All senior staff report to Conference Room Alpha immediately. Priority 1 alert. They found Jiho pacing behind a conference table covered with data tablets and portable screens. His usually perfect uniform was wrinkled, and his eyes showed the strain of someone who had been awake too long. "We have a situation," he announced as staff members filed into the room. 47 minutes ago, we received a communication from an unauthorized source within the prison." "What kind of communication?" Dong-Yun asked. "A proposal," Jiho said, activating a holographic display. "Someone claiming to represent the prisoner population has offered to negotiate the terms of a mass escape." The room fell silent. In 12 years of operation, no prisoner had ever attempted to communicate with prison administration except through official channels. "Show us the message," Minji said. Jiho activated an audio recording. The voice that filled the room was calm, educated, and completely confident. "Commander Jiho, this is Kyungmin, speaking on behalf of my fellow inmates. We have a proposal that will benefit everyone involved. We know that Consultant Minji has identified significant weaknesses in your security systems. We also know that her report will likely result in major changes to prison operations." The recording paused, and when it resumed, the voice carried a note of amusement. "Rather than wait for those changes to be implemented, we would prefer to negotiate our departure on mutually acceptable terms. We have no interest in violence or unnecessary destruction. We simply want to leave, and we believe we can do so with or without your cooperation." Another pause. "If you are interested in discussing terms, have Consultant Minji come to Maximum Security Cell K001 at 1800 hours today. Come alone, and come prepared to listen. If you choose not to respond, we will proceed with our original plan at 2000 hours." The recording ended, leaving the conference room in stunned silence. "He's demanding negotiation," Soman said. "From maximum security isolation?" "He's not demanding anything," Minji corrected. "He's making an offer." And the confidence in his voice suggests he's very sure about his ability to follow through on his threat. "We can't negotiate with prisoners," Dong-Yun said. "It sets a precedent that undermines authority throughout the galactic prison system. And we can't ignore a direct threat to facility security," Jiho added. Minji studied the faces around the table. Everyone was focused on the political and administrative implications of the situation. No one was asking the most important question: how did he record and transmit that message? She said. The question stopped all conversation. "Maximum security prisoners have no access to communication equipment," Soman said slowly. "And their cells are monitored constantly by multiple overlapping systems," Dong-Yun added. "Yet somehow, Kyungmin recorded a message and transmitted it to your communications center without triggering any security alerts," Minji said. "Which means either your monitoring systems failed completely or someone helped him." "The ghost prisoners," Soman said. "More than that," Minji replied. "This message proves they have access to communication systems, recording equipment, and transmission capabilities. They're not just hiding in your facility, they're operating a complete intelligence network." Jiho sat down heavily in his chair. "What are our options?" "3 choices," Minji said. "First, you can ignore the threat and hope your security systems can contain whatever they're planning. Second, you can try to find and neutralize the ghost prisoners before 2000 hours. Third, you can send me to hear what they have to say." "The first 2 options might prevent an escape," Dong-Yun said. "They might also trigger exactly the kind of violent confrontation Kyungmin said he wants to avoid," Minji countered. "And based on what I've seen of their planning capabilities, I wouldn't bet on your systems being able to stop them if they're really committed to leaving. What would you recommend?" Minji looked around the table at faces filled with uncertainty and fear. These people had built their careers on the assumption that their prison was escape-proof. Now they were being forced to confront the possibility that their most basic assumptions were wrong. "I recommend we find out what they really want," she said. "Because I have a feeling this isn't really about escape at all." "What else could it be about?" "I think," Minji said slowly, "that Kyungmin and his allies have spent 3 years learning everything there is to know about this prison. And now they want to teach you what they've learned." "Why would they do that?" Because, she said, meeting Jiho's eyes, they know something about this facility that you don't. Something important enough to risk everything to make sure you understand. The chronometer on the wall showed 1642 hours. In 78 minutes, Minji would walk into Kyungmin's cell and discover what the galaxy's most dangerous prisoners had been planning for 3 years, and something told her that once she learned their secret, nothing would ever be the same. At exactly 1800 hours, Minji stood outside Kyungmin's cell for the second time in 3 days. But everything had changed since their first meeting. The energy barrier that served as his door shimmered with new significance, and the silence from inside carried weight that hadn't existed before. "Recording systems active," Soman announced from the monitoring station. "Emergency response teams in position." "If this goes wrong," Jiho began. "It won't," Minji said with more confidence than she felt. "But if it does, don't try to rescue me. Just seal this section and wait." She stepped through the energy barrier and into the cell. Kyungmin was waiting for her, but he wasn't alone. 2 other figures stood in the shadows near the back wall, somehow managing to occupy a space that should have been impossible to hide in. "Consultant Minji," Kyungmin said, gesturing to his companions, "allow me to introduce my colleagues." The first figure stepped forward. She was human, middle-aged, with the kind of scars that came from explosives work. Dr. Hyjin Park, formerly of the Terran Engineering Corps, officially deceased for 14 months. The second figure was a Calarian male with silver skin marked by intricate tattoos. Captain Sang-yoon, former intelligence officer with the Border Defense Forces, deceased for 22 months, according to your records. Minji looked at the 3 of them, understanding finally dawning. "You're all military." "We're all prisoners of war," Kyungmin corrected. "Held without trial, without legal representation, without any of the protections supposedly guaranteed by galactic law. The Galactic Prison Authority doesn't hold prisoners of war," Minji said. "That violates the interstellar conventions." "The Galactic Prison Authority doesn't officially hold prisoners of war," Dr. Park said. "Officially, we're all terrorists, criminals, or deceased. But unofficially," Captain Sang-yoon added, "we're test subjects." The words hit Minji like a physical blow. Test subjects for what? Kyungmin activated a small device that materialized from somewhere in the cell's seemingly bare walls. A holographic display appeared showing technical schematics that made Minji's blood run cold. "Behavioral modification technology," he said. "Neural programming techniques designed to alter personality, memory, and decision-making processes. Your friends outside have been using this prison as a laboratory for 3 years?" The schematics showed systems that Minji had assumed were standard monitoring equipment. But viewed from this perspective, she could see their true purpose. The neural scanners weren't just detecting hostile thoughts, they were mapping brain patterns for modification. The isolation cells weren't just containment, they were sensory deprivation chambers designed to make subjects more susceptible to programming. "The general population doesn't know," Dr. Park continued. "Their neural modifications are subtle, designed to increase compliance and reduce aggressive behavior. But those of us in maximum security receive more intensive treatment. They're trying to turn us into different people," Captain Sang-yoon said. "Erase our memories, our loyalties, our personalities, then release us back into society as unknowing agents?" Minji stared at the evidence displayed before her. If this was true, then the Galactic Prison Authority wasn't just violating interstellar law. They were conducting illegal human experimentation on a massive scale. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because," Kyungmin said, "you're the first person to come to this facility who might be able to stop it. I'm just a security consultant." "You're a human security consultant with a reputation for solving impossible problems. More importantly, you're someone the outside authorities will believe. And if I don't believe you?" Kyungmin smiled sadly. "Then in 2 hours we'll demonstrate that this prison's security is meaningless. We'll escape, take the evidence with us, and expose the truth in a way that will probably destroy several governments and start at least one war. You'd rather avoid that?" "We're soldiers, not terrorists," Captain Sang-yoon said. "We don't want to cause unnecessary destruction. But we won't allow this program to continue. Dr. Park moved to another section of the wall and activated additional hidden systems. New displays appeared, showing surveillance footage from throughout the prison. The ghost network we've built over the past 3 years wasn't just for gathering intelligence, she explained. We've been documenting everything, recording evidence, building a case that will stand up in any court in the galaxy. But evidence only matters if someone trustworthy can present it, Kyungmin added. And we can't do that while we're officially dead or labeled as terrorists. Minji studied the footage playing on the displays. She saw prisoners being moved to medical facilities for procedures that weren't in their official records. She saw staff members administering treatments that had no documentation. She saw technology being used in ways that violated every ethical standard she knew. How many people know about this? She asked. Within the prison? Maybe a dozen staff members at the highest levels, Kyungmin said. Outside the prison? We estimate. The conspiracy involves at least 50 people across multiple governments and organizations. And you think I can expose all of this? We think you can give us the credibility we need to expose it ourselves. The cell fell silent as Minji processed what she had learned. Outside, she knew that Jiho and his staff were monitoring everything, probably assuming this was an elaborate escape plan. They had no idea they were listening to the exposure of their own complicity in war crimes. What exactly are you asking me to do? She said finally. Come with us, Dr. Park said. When we leave tonight, come with us as a witness. Help us present this evidence to the proper authorities. And if I refuse? Then we go alone, Kyungmin said. But our escape will be violent and destructive because we'll have to fight our way through security systems designed to contain us. People will die, the evidence might be lost, and the conspiracy will just move to another facility. You're blackmailing me. We're giving you a choice, Captain Sang-Yun corrected. The easy way or the hard way. Either choice results in the truth being revealed, but only one choice minimizes casualties. Minji looked at each of them in turn. They were calm, confident, and completely serious. Whatever they had planned, they believed it would work. How? Do I know you're telling the truth about the neural modification programs? Kyungmin touched a control on his device and the holographic displays changed to show real-time brain scans. Because right now, they're trying to modify your neural patterns through the monitoring systems in this cell. Minji felt a chill run down her spine. What? The scanners have been mapping your thought patterns since you arrived, Dr. Park explained. They're particularly interested in how humans process security information. Every conversation you've had, every observation you've made, every conclusion you've drawn, it's all being recorded and analyzed. They brought you here to study you, Captain Sang-Yun said. To understand how human minds work when evaluating prison security. Then they'll use that knowledge to design better containment systems for future human prisoners. The displays showed detailed neural maps that were clearly focused on Minji's brain activity. The level of detail was terrifying. They could see not just what she was thinking, but how she was thinking it. The question, Kyungmin said quietly, is what you're going to do with this knowledge. Outside the cell, alarms began to sound. Emergency. Lights flashed red as security teams mobilized throughout the prison. Something was happening, and Minji realized that whatever the ghost prisoners had planned was already in motion. Time's up, Dr. Park said. Decision time. Minji looked at the evidence surrounding her, then at the 3 people who had risked everything to show it to her. In the distance, she could hear the sound of her colleagues rushing to respond to a crisis they didn't understand. If I come with you, she said, how do I know you won't just kill me once we're outside? Because, Kyungmin said, we need you alive more than we need you dead. Dead witnesses are forgotten. Living witnesses change the world. The alarms grew. Louder and footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Whatever was happening, it was accelerating beyond anyone's control. Minji took a deep breath and made the decision that would define the rest of her life. Show me the way out. 6 months later, Minji stood in the chambers of the Galactic High Court, watching as the final verdict was delivered. The judges, representing 12 different species, spoke in unison as they condemned the illegal experimentation program that had operated within the Galactic Prison Authority for over 5 years. The evidence presented by the Witness Coalition, the chief judge announced, demonstrates systematic violations of interstellar law, including unauthorized neural modification, illegal detention of prisoners of war, and conspiracy to commit crimes against sentient beings. In the defendant's section, former Commander Jiho sat with his head bowed. Beside him, Dong-Yun and 17 other prison officials waited to learn their fate. The evidence against them was overwhelming, compiled over 3 years by prisoners who had turned their cells into intelligence-gathering operations, but the most significant figure in the courtroom wasn't among the defendants. Director Soven, the highest authority in the prison system, had been found dead in his quarters 2 days before the trial began. The official cause was suicide, but Minji suspected the truth was more complex. The judge continued reading the verdict. The court finds that the actions of the defendants constitute war crimes of the highest magnitude. However, the court also acknowledges the extraordinary circumstances that led to the exposure of these crimes. Minji glanced at the witness section, where Kyungmin, Dr. Park, and Captain Sang-Yoon sat with the other former prisoners who had participated in the Ghost Network. Their faces showed satisfaction but also exhaustion. The past 6 months had been a battle against powerful forces that wanted the truth buried forever. Therefore, the judge said, this court orders the immediate shutdown of all neural modification programs within the galactic prison system. All prisoners subjected to unauthorized treatments will receive full medical rehabilitation and appropriate compensation. The courtroom erupted in quiet celebration from the victims section. But Minji knew the real victory wasn't in the courtroom. It was in the changes already spreading throughout the galaxy. After the trial, she found herself on the observation deck of the same space station where it all began. But Kepler Station had been transformed. The prison complex still existed, but it operated under completely different principles. The rehabilitation programs are showing remarkable success, Soman reported as she joined Minji at the viewing window. The former head warden had become the station's new administrator, responsible for implementing the reforms that emerged from the trial. What kind of success? Recidivism rates have dropped by 70%. Violent incidents are down 90%. And we have a waiting list of former inmates who want to return as staff members. Minji smiled at that. The idea of former prisoners becoming prison guards would have seemed insane 6 months ago. Now it was the foundation of an entirely new approach to corrections. How is Kyungmin doing in his new role? See for yourself, Soman said, pointing to a section of the complex where construction was underway. Through the transparent walls, Minji could see Kyungmin working with a team of engineers and former inmates to design new facilities. Instead of cells designed for containment, they were building spaces designed for education, therapy, and skill development. He says the goal is to make the prison a place people want to stay until they're ready to leave, Soman continued. Not because they're forced to, but because it's helping them become better than they were. And the other ghost prisoners? Dr. Park is heading our new medical ethics committee. Captain Sang-Yoon runs the intelligence analysis program that helps us identify potential security threats before they become problems. It was a radical transformation. Instead of trying to break prisoners' spirits, the new system focused on understanding why people committed crimes and addressing those underlying causes. Instead of isolation and punishment, inmates received education, therapy, and opportunities to contribute meaningfully to society. The Galactic Prison Authority wasn't happy with these changes, Soman said. I imagine not. They tried to shut down the program twice, but the evidence from the trial made that politically impossible, Minji nodded. The documentation that Kyungmin and his colleagues had compiled didn't just expose the crimes at Kepler Station. It revealed similar programs operating throughout the galaxy, leading to investigations and reforms across dozens of systems. More importantly, Soman continued. The new approach is working better than anyone expected. Crime rates are dropping. In systems that have adopted these methods, other prisons are requesting permission to implement similar programs. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Soman activated her portable display, revealing a message from the Terran Defense. Council. Consultant Minji, she read aloud. Your report on human psychological security protocols has been approved for implementation throughout the Alliance. We are pleased to offer you the position of Chief Security Advisor for Interstellar Corrections. You're moving up in the world, Soman observed. I'm trying to make sure this never happens again. Minji corrected. She looked back at the prison complex, watching former enemies work together to build something better than what had existed before. The transformation wasn't complete. It would take years to fully implement the new systems and decades to change the culture of corrections throughout the galaxy, but the foundation had been laid. And it started with a simple recognition that the best security came not from stronger walls, but from understanding why people wanted to escape in the first place. There's something else, Soman said. A question that Kyungmin asked me to give you. What question? He wants to know what you would have done if the situation had been different. If there had been no illegal experimentation, no war crimes, no conspiracy, if it had just been a normal prison evaluation. Minji considered the question. It was the same question that had started everything asked by an instructor who thought he understood security. I would have given him the same answer. I gave you that first day, she said finally. It depends. Do you want escapees? And now? Now I know that the answer isn't about preventing escapes. It's about making escape unnecessary. She looked out at the galaxy beyond the station, knowing that similar transformations were beginning in dozens of other systems, the human approach to corrections, focusing on rehabilitation rather than punishment, understanding rather than suppression, was spreading throughout civilized space. The instructor asked, "What would you do here?" Minji said quietly, and the answer turned out to be, "Change everything." Soman smiled. Was that your plan from the beginning? No, Minji admitted. My plan was to evaluate security systems and write a report. But sometimes the most important discoveries happen when you're looking for something else entirely. A new group of former inmates was arriving at the station, transported from other facilities to participate in the rehabilitation programs. Among them, Minji could see faces from dozens of different species, all looking uncertain about what they would find. But instead of guards waiting to process them as prisoners, they were met by counselors, educators, and former inmates who had chosen to stay and help others make the same transformation they had experienced. You know what the most interesting thing is? Soman said. We now have better security than we ever had before. How so? Because our inmates help us maintain it. They report problems, suggest improvements, and work with us to prevent the kind of issues that used to require force to resolve. It was the ultimate expression of human insight applied to an impossible problem. Instead of trying to build perfect walls, they had built perfect understanding. Instead of preventing escape, they had eliminated the desire to escape. The instructor asked what I would do, Minji said. I told him it depended on whether he wanted escapees. But I never told him the real answer. Which was? The real answer is that if you do your job right, the question becomes irrelevant. Because when people are in the right place, doing meaningful work with hope for the future, they don't want to escape. They want to stay. More than that, Minji said, watching the former prisoners greeting the new arrivals with compassion and understanding. They want to help others find the same thing they found. As the galaxy's first rehabilitation-based correction facility continued its work, Minji realized that the greatest security wasn't built with technology or force. It was built with the simple recognition that every prisoner was a person who had lost their way, and that the best way to prevent escape was to help them find a reason to stay. The instructor had asked what she would do, and she had done something no one expected. She had turned the galaxy's most escape-proof prison into a place that no one wanted to escape from, sometimes. The best answer to an impossible question was to make the question impossible to ask.